I'm Diane Myers, 34 years old, and last Christmas my family's dinner table turned into a battlefield. Mom stood up, wine glass in hand, and dropped a bomb. "We're selling the family business," she said, her voice cold. "Mitchell's Foods is gone. $15 million. And Diane, you get nothing, you walked away." My siblings cheered, their voices loud, smug, like they had just won the lottery. I felt the room spin, their laughter cutting deeper than my mother's words. To them, I was finished, irrelevant, the daughter who had abandoned her chance and proven herself unworthy. I leaned back, forcing a smile, though my heart pounded like a drum. "Mom, who's the buyer?" I asked, my voice calm and steady. She smirked, proud as ever. "Peak Ventures. They're taking it all?" I let the silence linger, then laughed, a sharp, deliberate sound. "Mom," I said, locking eyes with her, "I am Peak Ventures." The room froze. My dad choked on his water, coughing uncontrollably. My siblings' cheers died in their throats. Mom's face went pale, her glass trembling, wine sloshing dangerously near the rim. I didn't blink. In that single moment, I held all the power, and none of them had the faintest idea of what was coming next. Before we dive deeper into this story, tell me, what time is it where you're watching, and which city are you in? I'd love to see just how far across the world my story has traveled. To understand why that moment mattered, I need to take you back to my childhood at our family's food plant. Growing up in Montgomery, Alabama, I spent my days at Mitchell's Foods, the company my grandmother, Helen Myers, built from nothing in the 1960s. It wasn't just a business, it was her legacy, a name known for quality snacks across the South. At 10, I'd trail Grandma Helen through the factory, her white hair tied back, her voice sharp, as she inspected every batch of chips. She'd point to the machines, explaining how consistency mattered, how a single bad batch could ruin trust. "Diane," she'd say, kneeling to meet my eyes, "make things better always." Her passion wasn't just about food, it was about pride, about creating something people relied on. I started small, packing boxes after school, my hands sticky with potato chip dust. By 12, I was helping with inventory, learning the rhythm of the plant. Grandma Helen taught me to question everything. Why couldn't we try new flavors? Why not streamline the packaging line? She'd grin at my ideas, scribbling them on napkins during lunch breaks. "You've got a head for this?" she'd say, her eyes bright. Those moments shaped me, gave me a purpose. I wanted to make Mitchell's Foods bigger, better, something Grandma Helen would be proud of. But Mom, Susan Myers, saw things differently. She took over after Grandma Helen passed when I was 15. Where Grandma Helen dreamed of innovation, Mom obsessed over profit margins. She'd walk the factory floor, clipboard in hand, barking orders to cut costs. "We don't need fancy machines," she'd snap when I suggested automating the packing line. "This isn't Silicon Valley." Her focus was numbers, sales figures, not quality. She'd push workers to churn out more, even if it meant rushed batches that didn't meet Grandma Helen's standards. I'd watch customers complain about stale chips, and it stung. This wasn't the company Grandma Helen built. I tried to speak up. I pitched a plan to sell online to reach customers beyond Alabama. Mom laughed, her voice cold. "You're a kid, Diane. Stick to school." Her words hit hard, but I kept going. I studied the industry, read about companies using websites to grow. I'd stay late at the plant sketching ideas for new snacks, spicy barbecue chips maybe, or healthier options. I'd show them to the workers, who'd nod impressed. But Mom shut me down every time. "Focus on what works," she'd say, dismissing my notes without a glance. Her vision was small, safe, stuck in the past. The difference between Grandma Helen and Mom wasn't just business, it was personal. Grandma Helen believed in me, saw potential in my questions. Mom saw me as a nuisance, a kid who didn't know her place. I'd overhear her talking to the plant manager, saying I was too ambitious for my own good. It hurt, but it lit a fire in me. I wanted to prove her wrong, to show I could carry Grandma Helen's legacy forward. By 17, I was running small experiments, tweaking recipes with the night shift crew. We'd test new spices, laughing as we tasted our creations. Those moments felt alive, like I was touching something bigger than myself. But Mom's control tightened. She'd check every expense, question every change. Once I reordered a batch of packaging to fix a design flaw. It cost a few $100s but saved thousands in returns. Mom was furious. "You don't make decisions here," she shouted, her face red. I stood my ground, explaining the math, but she wouldn't listen. The workers respected me, saw my ideas work, but Mom's word was law. I started to see the truth. Mitchell's Foods wasn't growing, it was shrinking under her. Customers were leaving, lured by competitors with better products. I'd lie awake at night thinking of Grandma Helen, her voice echoing, "Make things better." That tension between Grandma Helen's dreams and Mom's stubbornness defined my teenage years. I wasn't just fighting for ideas, I was fighting for a place in the family, for respect. Every rejection from Mom pushed me closer to a choice I didn't want to make. I loved Mitchell's Foods, loved what it could be. But I was starting to realize I couldn't change it from the inside, not with Mom in charge. Grandma Helen's lessons stayed with me: quality, innovation, pride. They became my compass, guiding me towards something bigger, even if I didn't know what yet. As I grew up, I wanted to transform the company, but my mom and eldest sister pushed me out. The plant was struggling, losing customers to flashier competitors with online stores and automated lines. I saw a way forward. During a shift break, I sketched a plan for a website to sell our snacks directly to customers. I stayed up late researching, learning how companies like Frito-Lay used e-commerce to grow. We could reach the whole country, I told the plant manager, my voice buzzing with excitement. He nodded, impressed, but said, "Talk to your mom, Diane. She calls the shots." I went to Mom with my proposal. I'd spent weeks on it, detailing how a website could boost sales by 20% in a year. I suggested automating the packing line, too. New machines could cut labor costs and improve quality. Mom barely glanced at my notes. "This is a waste of time," she said, tossing the papers on her desk. "We're fine as is. You're too young to understand business." Her words stung, but I pushed back. "Customers are leaving, Mom. We're losing ground." She rolled her eyes. "Stick to school, Diane. Leave this to me." Then there was Rose Myers, my eldest sister. She was Mom's right hand, always hovering at the plant, acting like she owned it. Rose didn't just dismiss my ideas, she mocked them. I'd pitch automating the line to speed up production, and she'd laugh. "What, you think you're some tech genius now?" she'd say, her voice dripping with sarcasm. She'd turn to Mom, smirking. "Diane's just playing CEO?" It wasn't just her words. It was the way she looked at me, like I was a kid who didn't belong. I'd argue back, showing her data on how automation saved competitors millions. She'd wave me off. "You're out of your depth," she'd snap. The workers saw through her. They'd whisper to me, "Keep pushing, Diane. You're onto something." But Rose wasn't just dismissive, she was calculating. By 18, I noticed her cozying up to Mom, whispering during meetings, eyeing me like I was a threat. She wanted control of Mitchell's Foods, not just a role in it. I overheard her once talking to Mom in the office. "Diane's ideas are reckless," she said. "She'll tank the company with her experiments." I was furious but stayed calm, presenting another plan for online sales at a staff meeting. I'd mapped out how we could target new markets, even mocked up a website design. The workers clapped, but Rose cut in. "This is a distraction," she said, glaring at me. "We don't need your fancy ideas." Mom nodded. "Rose is right, Diane. Stop wasting our time." It got worse. At 20, I was working full-time at the plant, managing a small team on the night shift. My ideas were working. Our packaging tweaks cut waste by 10%. But Rose kept undermining me, telling Mom my changes were unauthorized. One day, Mom called me into her office. "You're causing trouble," she said, her voice flat. "Rose says you're pushing people too hard, taking risks we can't afford." I was stunned. "Mom, my changes are saving money," I said, showing her the numbers. She didn't look. "You're not ready for this," she said. "Rose knows what's best." I realized then that Rose wasn't just competing, she was orchestrating. She'd spent months convincing Mom I was a liability, planting doubts to secure her own place. The final blow came just after my 22nd birthday. Mom called a family meeting, just the three of us. "Diane," she said, her tone cold. "You're out. You're not part of Mitchell's Foods anymore. Rose will take over your duties." I felt my chest tighten. "You're firing me?" I asked, my voice shaking. Rose smirked, arms crossed. "It's for the best," she said. "You're not cut out for this." Mom didn't meet my eyes. "It's decided," she said. I stood there, betrayed, my years of work erased. I could have begged, fought to stay, but something snapped inside me. Grandma Helen's voice echoed, "Make things better." I looked at Mom and Rose, their smug faces burning into me. "Fine," I said, my voice steady. "I'll do it myself." I walked out, my heart racing, not with defeat but with fire. I left Montgomery and moved to Jacksonville to start over. Walking away from Mitchell's Foods and my family's betrayal lit a fire in me. I wasn't just running from Mom and Rose, I was chasing the vision Grandma Helen planted in me: make things better. Jacksonville, Florida was a fresh slate, a bustling city with a growing food industry. I arrived with a suitcase, a few $100s, and a stubborn belief I could prove them wrong. My first step was a job at Coastal Foods, a consulting firm that helped mid-sized food companies streamline operations. I started as an analyst, crunching numbers on supply chains and market trends. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. I threw myself into work, learning fast. Coastal Foods gave me access to data, sales reports, production costs, customer habits. I studied how successful brands grew, how they used technology to cut waste and reach new markets. My bosses noticed. Within a year, I was leading small projects, redesigning inventory systems for clients. I'd stay late, poring over case studies, teaching myself about logistics and branding. Every success felt like a jab at Mom's dismissal, a reminder I wasn't the kid she thought I was. But I was still green, and I knew it. I needed guidance to go further. That's when I met Patricia Wells, my mentor. She was a senior consultant at Coastal, sharp and no-nonsense with decades in the food industry. I first saw her at a client meeting, commanding the room as she outlined a turnaround plan for a struggling bakery. I was in awe. After the meeting, I mustered the courage to introduce myself. "Patricia," I said, "I want to do what you do. Fix companies, make them thrive." She raised an eyebrow but listened as I shared my ideas for optimizing supply chains. To my surprise, she invited me to coffee. Over the next months, Patricia became my guide. She taught me how to pitch to executives, how to spot inefficiencies others missed. "You've got instinct, Diane," she'd say, "but you need discipline to back it up." Patricia saw something in me I hadn't fully seen myself. She pushed me to think bigger, to not just fix systems but reimagine them. By 24, I was leading major projects at Coastal, helping clients like regional snack brands double their output. I developed a knack for spotting what held companies back: outdated equipment, poor branding, or lazy marketing. I'd walk clients through plans to automate their lines or launch online stores, watching their profits climb. Each win fueled me, but I wanted more. I didn't just want to fix other people's companies, I wanted to build my own. That's when the idea for Peak Ventures took shape. At 27, I told Patricia I was ready to start something new. "I want to invest in food companies," I said. "Buy them, modernize them, make them grow." She didn't laugh or doubt me. Instead, she sat me down and walked me through the basics: business plans, investor pitches, legal structures. With her help, I launched Peak Ventures in 2014. My model was simple but bold: acquire struggling food businesses, streamline their operations, and boost their market reach with technology. I started small, buying a failing sauce company for $1 million. I overhauled their packaging, automated their bottling line, and launched an e-commerce site. Within a year, they were profitable, and I sold them for triple the price. Peak Ventures grew fast. By 30, I'd acquired and flipped 3 more companies: snack brands, frozen food lines, even a small bakery chain. My team developed a system analyze a company's weaknesses, implement tech-driven solutions, and reposition their brand. We used data to target new customers, optimized supply chains to cut costs, and built sleek online platforms to drive sales. Industry blogs started calling me a turnaround expert. Clients sought me out, not the other way around. By 34, Peak Ventures was managing a portfolio worth tens of millions, with a reputation for transforming businesses others had written off. I'd walk into boardrooms, once the kid mom called too young, now the one calling the shots. Every deal felt personal. Each company I saved was a nod to Grandma Helen's legacy, quality, innovation, pride. I'd think of her when I signed contracts, her voice in my head, make things better. But I didn't forget Montgomery. Mom and Rose's betrayal stayed with me, a quiet fuel. I hadn't spoken to them in years, hadn't gone back home. I'd built a life in Jacksonville, a career that proved I didn't need their approval. Yet part of me wondered about Mitchell's Foods, about what it could have been if they'd listened. I wasn't chasing revenge, not yet. I was chasing something bigger, the chance to show what I could do, to build something they couldn't ignore. Last fall, a call from Richard Holt changed everything. I was in my Jacksonville office wrapping up a deal for Peak Ventures when my phone buzzed. Richard Holt, an investment banker I'd worked with on past acquisitions, was on the line. "Diane," he said, his voice low. "Mitchell's Foods is up for sale. Your family's company, it's in trouble." My stomach dropped. I hadn't spoken to Mom or Rose in years, hadn't set foot in Montgomery since I left. But hearing the name Mitchell's Foods, Grandma Helen's legacy, hit me hard. "Why are they selling?" I asked, gripping the phone. Richard explained the company was bleeding money, losing customers, and the board led by Mom was desperate to cash out. "They've got a $15 million valuation," he said, "but it's a fire sale. They need a buyer, fast." I hung up and sat back, my mind racing. Mitchell's Foods. The company I'd grown up in, the one I'd dreamed of making great, was failing. I wasn't surprised, but it still stung. I pulled up every financial report I could access through Peak Ventures' network, sales data, supplier contracts, customer reviews. The numbers were grim. Revenue had dropped 30% in 5 years. Key clients like regional grocery chains were jumping to competitors with fresher products and online stores. Mom's refusal to innovate, her obsession with cutting corners, had caught up. The plant's equipment was outdated, their website was a joke, and their brand felt stuck in the 90s. I saw Grandma Helen's vision crumbling, and it wasn't just business, it was personal. I called Richard back the next day. "Who's handling the sale?" I asked. He named a small bank in Birmingham, one I'd dealt with before. "They're discreet," he said, "but the deal's moving fast. Your mom and sister are pushing hard to close by year-end." I leaned forward, my pulse quickening. "What's the asking price?" I pressed. "15 million, he confirmed. "But they'll take less if it's quick." I thanked him and hung up, already pulling up Peak Ventures' financials. My company had the capital, the expertise, and the track record to handle a deal like this. But this wasn't just another acquisition. This was Mitchell's Foods, my family's legacy, the one Mom and Rose thought I wasn't good enough to touch. I spent weeks analyzing the data. I stayed late in my office spreadsheets, open coffee cold. The numbers told a story of neglect, high production costs, low margins, and a shrinking customer base. I saw exactly what went wrong. Mom's refusal to automate, her dismissal of e-commerce, her reliance on old-school distribution. It was the same fight I'd lost at 20. But I also saw potential. The brand still had value, a loyal base in Alabama, and a solid foundation. With Peak Ventures' model, modernized operations, online sales, rebranding, it could thrive again. I thought of Grandma Helen, her voice clear. Make things better. This was my chance. I decided to act, but I kept it quiet. I didn't tell Patricia, my mentor, or even my closest team members at Peak Ventures. This was too personal, too risky. If Mom or Rose caught wind of my involvement, they'd sabotage the deal just to spite me. I contacted the Birmingham bank through a shell company, one of Peak Ventures' subsidiaries, to mask my identity. "We're interested," I told their lead negotiator, keeping my tone neutral. "Send us the full financials." They did, and I pored over every detail, building a plan to save Mitchell's Foods. I wasn't just buying a company, I was protecting what Grandma Helen built, what Mom and Rose had nearly destroyed. I met with Richard again, this time in person at a Jacksonville cafe. "You're serious about this?" he asked, eyeing me over his coffee. I nodded. "I want it done clean, Richard. No leaks. Peak Ventures will move through a third party." He raised an eyebrow but agreed to coordinate. I laid out my terms: a fair offer, quick close, and absolute confidentiality. "Your family won't know it's you?" he asked, half smiling. "Not until it's done," I said, my voice firm. I wasn't ready to face Mom or Rose, not yet. But I was ready to take back what was mine, not for revenge, but for pride. Grandma Helen's legacy deserved better, and I was the one to make it happen. By late fall, the plan was in motion. I worked with my team to prepare Peak Ventures resources, lining up funds, and drafting strategies to overhaul Mitchell's Foods. I didn't tell them the target, only that it was a high-potential acquisition. My heart raced every time I thought about it, not just the deal, but what it meant. I was stepping back into the family I'd left behind, not as the kid they kicked out, but as someone they couldn't ignore. As the Christmas party approached, I uncovered my mom and eldest sister's true plans. I hadn't been back to Montgomery in over a decade, but I booked a flight from Jacksonville, my heart heavy with anticipation. The family home where Mom and Dad still lived was the stage for our annual gathering. I was walking into a lion's den, knowing my secret plan to save Mitchell's Foods was in motion through Peak Ventures. I packed light, just a suitcase, and rehearsed, keeping my composure. This wasn't just a holiday dinner, it was a showdown, and I needed to be sharp. The night before the party, I arrived at the house. The air felt thick with tension the moment I stepped inside. My sister Carol Myers greeted me with a stiff hug, her smile forced. My brother Brian Myers nodded from the couch, barely looking up from his phone. My Aunt Linda Myers fussed over the decorations, her chatter masking the unease. My Uncle Edward Myers offered me a drink, his eyes darting nervously. Then there was my cousin Susan Carter, who'd driven in from Birmingham. She gave me a quick wave, her usual warmth dulled. Mom and Rose weren't there yet, but their presence loomed. Nobody mentioned Mitchell's Foods, but the silence screamed it was on everyone's mind. Dinner was set for the next evening, and I spent the day helping Linda in the kitchen, keeping my ears open. The family gathered slowly, Carol and Brian bickering over table settings, Edward trying to lighten the mood with bad jokes. When Mom arrived, her face was tight. Her voice clipped as she greeted me. "Diane," she said, no warmth in her tone. Rose followed, her eyes scanning me like I was an outsider. The room felt colder with them there, the weight of our history pressing down. I forced a smile, playing the part of the dutiful daughter, but my mind was on the company, on Grandma Helen's legacy. During a lull before dinner, I slipped upstairs to grab my phone. That's when I overheard Mom and Rose in the study, their voices low but sharp. "The sale's almost done," Mom said, her tone smug. 15 million clean. "We'll fund your project, Rose." I froze, my hand on the doorknob. Rose's voice cut through. "My restaurant chain will be bigger than Mitchell's ever was," she said. "We don't need that old plant dragging us down." My blood boiled. They weren't just selling Grandma Helen's company. They were using the money to bankroll Rose's dream, some flashy new venture that had nothing to do with our family's roots. I backed away, my heart pounding. Downstairs, Susan Carter caught my eye, her expression uneasy. "You okay, Diane?" she asked quietly. I nodded, but my mind was racing. I cornered her later in the kitchen, away from the others. "What do you know about the sale?" I asked, keeping my voice low. Susan hesitated, then sighed. "Rose has been pushing Mom for months," she said. "She wants the money for a chain of upscale restaurants. They're calling Mitchell's a lost cause." I clenched my fists, fury rising. Grandma Helen built that company with sweat and pride, and now Mom and Rose were tossing it aside for Rose's ego. The dinner table was a battlefield. Carol and Brian made small talk, avoiding my gaze. Linda and Edward tried to keep things light, but the tension was palpable. Mom sat at the head, her posture rigid, while Rose smirked, sipping her wine. I kept quiet, watching, waiting. Every laugh, every glance between them felt like a betrayal. They thought they'd won, that selling Mitchell's Foods would erase the past and fund their future. But they didn't know I was steps ahead. My plan with Peak Ventures locked in, hidden behind a shell company. I thought of Grandma Helen, her voice steady in my mind. Make things better. As dessert was served, Mom stood up and tapped her wine glass. The dining room went quiet, the clink of silverware stopping as all eyes turned to her. My father, James Myers, leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Rose, my eldest sister, sat next to Mom, her posture smug. I gripped my fork, my heart pounding, knowing my secret plan to save Mitchell's Foods through Peak Ventures was about to collide with whatever Mom had planned. My mom cleared her throat, her voice sharp. I have an announcement, she said, her eyes sweeping the table but avoiding mine. Mitchell's Foods has been sold to Peak Ventures, a Jacksonville investment firm, for $15 million. It's done. The room erupted. Carol clapped, her face lighting up. Finally, she said, grinning at Brian, who nodded enthusiastically. It's about time we cashed out, he added, raising his glass. Linda and Edward exchanged uneasy glances while Susan Carter looked down at her plate, silent. I sat still, my pulse racing, waiting for the rest. Mom raised her hand for quiet. There's more, she continued, her tone cold. Diane gets nothing from this. She walked away from the company years ago, so she's not entitled to a dime. My chest tightened, but I kept my face neutral. Carol smirked, whispering something to Brian, who laughed. Rose leaned back, her eyes locked on me, daring me to react. I could feel the weight of their judgment, the same dismissal I'd faced at 22. Dad shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. The room felt like it was closing in, their words, echoing Mom's old verdict. I wasn't good enough. I took a deep breath, my resolve steeling. That's interesting, Mom, I said, my voice steady, cutting through the murmurs. All eyes turned to me. Because I'm the one who bought Mitchell's Foods. The table froze. Carol's jaw dropped. Brian's glass stopped midair and Mom's face went pale. Rose's eyes narrowed, her lips tightening. What are you talking about? Mom demanded, her voice shaking. I stood, meeting her gaze. I'm the owner of Peak Ventures, I said, each word deliberate. I bought the company through a shell firm to keep it quiet. Mitchell's Foods is mine now. The room exploded into chaos. Rose slammed her hand on the table, her face red. You lied to us, she shouted, pointing at me. You went behind our backs, Diane. This is betrayal. I didn't flinch. Betrayal, I shot back. You and Mom were ready to sell Grandma Helen's legacy to fund your restaurant chain. I saved it. Rose's eyes widened, stunned. I knew her plan. Carol jumped in, her voice shrill. You can't just take it. We deserve that money. Brian nodded, glaring. You don't get to swoop in after all these years, he said. Linda tried to shush them, but her voice was drowned out. Susan Carter stared at me, her expression unreadable, caught between shock and something else. Admiration, maybe. Dad stood, his hands raised. Enough? He said, his voice firm but strained. Let's talk this out. He looked at me, then Mom, trying to bridge the gap. Diane, why didn't you tell us? He asked, his tone softer. I shook my head. I didn't trust Mom or Rose to play fair, I said, glancing at them. They proved me right. Rose scoffed, folding her arms. You're a sneak, Diane. You always were. Mom's face hardened. You have no right to this company, she said. You abandoned it. I met her eyes, unflinching. I didn't abandon it. You pushed me out. And now I'm back to fix what you broke. Dad tried again, his voice pleading. We're family, he said. We can work this out. But Rose cut him off, her voice venomous. She's not family. She's a thief. Carol and Brian nodded, their loyalty clear. Linda and Edward stayed silent, their discomfort palpable. Susan Carter reached for my hand under the table, a small gesture of support, but it wasn't enough. The divide was too deep. Dad's shoulders slumped, his attempt at peace crumbling. I looked around the table at the family I'd once fought for, now fractured beyond repair. Grandma Helen's voice echoed in my mind, "Make things better." I'd saved Mitchell's Foods, but this fight was far from over. I stood taller, my voice calm but firm. "I didn't do this for you," I said, looking at Mom and Rose. "I did it for Grandma Helen, for what she built. I'll make Mitchell's Foods what it was meant to be." The room fell silent, the weight of my words sinking in. Rose glared, Mom looked away, and Dad's eyes dropped to the table. Carol and Brian muttered to each other, their support for Mom unwavering. I'd won the company, but the cost was clear. This family, this table, would never be the same. After the party, I faced Mom and Rose in the empty dining room. The guests had left, and the house was quiet, the remnants of dessert plates scattered on the table. I didn't sit. I stood tall, my voice steady. "I'm not here to make peace," I said. "You don't get to act like victims after what you did." Mom's eyes narrowed. "What we did?" she snapped. "You walked out on us, Diane. You abandoned the company." I shook my head, my anger rising. "You pushed me out?" I said, my tone sharp. "You and Rose mocked my ideas, called me a kid, and gave my role to her." I pointed at Rose, who flinched but didn't look away. "Then you planned to sell Grandma Helen's legacy to fund Rose's restaurant chain," I continued. "That's not family, that's selfishness." Rose stepped forward, her voice low. "You went behind our backs," she said. "You stole the company." I met her gaze. "I saved it," I said. "You were ready to let it die. There was no bridge to build here." Mom's silence was her admission, and Rose's glare was her defiance. I turned away, done with their excuses. I had work to do. Back in Jacksonville, I threw myself into Mitchell's Foods. I brought in my Peak Ventures team experts I'd trained for years. We replaced outdated machinery with automated systems, cutting production costs by 20%. I launched a new website, sleek and user-friendly, driving online sales that tripled in 3 months. We rebranded, emphasizing quality and tradition, and won back major clients like regional grocery chains. By mid-2024, revenue was up 40%, and industry reports praised Mitchell's as a comeback story. Every step was guided by Grandma Helen's voice in my head, "Make things better." Meanwhile, Mom and Rose faced the fallout. In Montgomery, word spread about the sale and my role in it. Local business owners who'd respected Grandma Helen turned cold toward Susan Myers. Her reputation as a leader crumbled when people learned she'd nearly sold the family legacy for personal gain. She stopped attending Chamber of Commerce meetings, her influence fading. Rose's restaurant chain, her big dream, collapsed before it even started. Without the sale money, her investors pulled out, and her plans for upscale bistros fell apart. She moved to Atlanta chasing new ventures, but her failure clung to her. Carol and Brian kept their distance, their loyalty to Mom wavering as the truth sank in. Dad called me once, his voice heavy, but I wasn't ready to talk. Susan Carter sent a text, proud but brief, and I appreciated her quiet support. Looking back, I saw the cost of their betrayal and the strength of my own path. I'd built Peak Ventures from nothing, turned around failing companies, and saved Mitchell's Foods when Mom and Rose gave up on it. Their choice to push me out to prioritize Rose's ambition over our family's legacy left them with nothing but regrets. I didn't need their approval to succeed, I never did. Grandma Helen taught me to stand on my own, to fight for what mattered. That was the lesson: self-reliance could overcome even the deepest betrayal. Mitchell's Foods was thriving not because of them, but because I refused to let it fall. I'd made it better just as she would have wanted, and that was enough.